Welcome to Wild West Garage. My name is Morgan, and I'm just walking up on this 305 that I built for that S10 you see off to the left there. So in this video I'm going to install this engine and talk about some of the details. So if you want to use this style manifold on an S10 V8 Swap, you have to heat the frame up here in a section right here and kind of beat that in so it's reverse of what it was. So this was way out here before. This kind of went straight back, and somebody already ground a hole in it for the header clearance prior to me working on it. But anyways, it's all fixed up now, painted, and I haven't tried it yet, but I'm pretty sure it's going to fit in there. I also moved the brake line ahead a bit here just to get it out of the way of the exhaust there. So I'm going to stick it in and see how it fits. So I'm just getting ready to prime the engine here, and I don't have the distributor in yet, so it's a good place to pour the oil in. So years ago I took an old distributor and I cut the top of it off and machined it down nice, and then cut the top of the shaft off as well. So I machined that down so I can hook a drill to it, as you can see here. So I don't have a fitting in the oil, like the oil port for the sending unit. So I'm just holding my finger over it and waiting for the oil to come out there. And made a bit of a mess, so I'm just holding a rag on it now. There's still pressure in there, so it's flowing out. So anyways, now that I got oil there, I'm going to screw a gauge in and mess around with it a bit here just to satisfy myself this engine has good tight bearings and whatnot. I did go over the engine and check everything out, but I just want to be satisfied just by checking the gauge and seeing how quickly the pressure drops when I stop turning the drill, and just to have some peace of mind. So I'm just going to go through the process of doing that here and just take a few minutes. I think it ended up having about 40 psi on the drill, so it's not a real powerful drill. So I was pretty confident that I had a good engine. I just watching the gauge now to see how long it takes for the pressure to drop, and it took quite a while, so that was a good indicator. to the windshield. So this handsome young fella you see helping me push the truck is my son. One of 4 sons. This is the 3rd boy. So he's a mechanic, and he had a couple weeks off, so he's hanging around the shop, helping me out. So I have a little bit of a problem here, and I don't know if I can hold this with one hand, show you. But see this right here? There's a bolt that goes through here into that head mount there. So that is supposed to go on top of there, like that. And I've modified the hose on the bottom a little bit. So that's where this is supposed to go, like. But because I've got this manifold on here now, there's no adjustment left. See, so you can see the lines right up against the manifold. So with the header on here, the header came up. It actually came up out of here and then back. So it didn't interfere with this pressure line. So now what I've got to do is come up with a way of mounting this up here higher. Up here somewhere. So I'm just in the process of working up a template to go on here so I can mount the pump up higher. I'll have to cut this off, this nut. I guess this went on top. Something went inside here, and there was a bolt that went through in this nut. Threads have been drilled out of it, so that's from some other application. So yeah, because this has the stubby water pump on it, it makes it really kind of difficult to. I can't just. I don't think there are other. Maybe I think Monza's had stubby water pumps on them, and they had really close bracketry to keep everything tight. But that was it. That's a pretty rare thing, and I had a set of those brackets years ago, and I sold them to guys. So I'm out of luck. Okay, so here's what I came up with. I made a plate that bolts onto the front of the block here. You can see that to the front of the head. It's got a little zigzag in it because this you can see that sort of looks like a nut in there. I guess it was, but it's welded onto the original bracket, but somebody drilled it out, so there's no threads in it anymore. But so I was going to cut that off, but that would have made the hole on this side, on this part here that I'm touching, is bigger than the hole in the nut, so I didn't want it sloppy, so I just thought, well, I'll just make it, I'll zigzag this. So that bolts on there with three bolts. There's three bolt holes in the front of that head, and then so yes, you can see 1, 2, and then 3. And then, so once I had that plate made, I bolted the bracket onto it, and then I made this plate with a slot. So it pivots here, pivots on this bolt, and that's the adjustment. So it's pretty solid. Wiggles around a little bit. I don't think it'll be enough to cause any problems, I hope. We'll see. It kind of looks like kind of looks like it's a long belt. I like to keep belts short as possible, but that's really the only place it could go. I might have been able to mount it way down there, but then I'd have to rearrange the fuel lines. There's a oil filter down there, so this is really the only place it could have gone. So Anyways, looks kind of like a tractor, but it's gonna work. It's not a high RPM motor, so I don't think I have to worry about it jumping off there. Well, I didn't really think this through too well. As you can see, we've got a bit of a clearance problem here. Hose has to come out here, right in front of spinning part, and it has to get to from here to there. So all this work I did is going in the trash. Okay, here's the solution. I got it pivoting way down there now. I welded a piece of plate on here, or it's 3/16 plate, 2.5 by 2.5, kind of on the bottom of this bracket, and then the spacer that was in here, right in here before, I welded that to the piece of plate. I put a gusset on it because it's not straight angle. I wish I wish I had taken a picture of this before I put it all together, but I was so annoyed at myself for building that bracket up there, and I thought I did a pretty good job of that first bracket. I was pretty proud of myself. But anyways, I just wanted to get it done, so I was just jamming through it. So sorry about that. Anyways, it's pivoting on. There's a bracket down there, the old bracket for the original power steering bracket, the adjustment arm. It's kind of like this here. Only it was pivoting on top, and then this adjustment arm came up through here. So I cut that off and just left a little part of it there, and that's what it's pivoting on now. It's really heavy material, so it's good and strong. I think it's actually as strong or stronger than the other one was. Yeah, it wiggles around a little bit, but everything wiggles around a bit. Anyways, it's gonna work. Okay, just a little overview of the small block V8 in the first gen S10. Okay, so the alternator, see that? It's pivoting on the one and only bolt hole on this side of the head. 3 on that side, only 1 on this side. And I've got the adjuster, the slotted, whatever you want to call it, arm, bolted in down here. Quite a long spacer. There's 2 bolt holes at the front of the block here, this is going into the bottom one. And then on the power steering pump, there's a bracket on here, same thing on those 2 bolts on the front of the engine. I guess they're engine mount bolts for the earlier small block applications, like in the 50s. It's just a carryover from that. So this is fairly heavy. I think it's 3/8 piece of 3/8 material here. This was originally the power steering adjustment arm, like this piece here, right? It was underneath, and it pivoted off of right here. There's a hole in the bracket, and then there's a hole back here. So it's like a C-channel kind of thing. Had a spacer in it, and it used to screw onto the top hole on the top outside hole on the front of the head here, and it pivoted off the top. I've got it pivoting off the bottom now, There's a hole in this this bottom bracket, the original bracket. So I've got it pivoting on there. It's probably about, I'd say about 4.5 inches out, straight out from this top bolt. And then I welded a 2x2 piece of, or 2.5 by 2.5 piece of steel onto the bottom of this bracket, kind of, I don't know, kind of at a, it's probably not a 45. I don't know, it's an angle. Not sure what it is. And then I took the spacer out of here and welded it onto the bottom of that hunk of plate, put a gusset on it, made a pivot arm, or adjustment arm at the top, so now it pivots on the bottom, adjusts on the top, and I'll show you underneath too. And so we got the truck manifolds. These are like very common manifolds on pickups, like maybe even some cars, I don't know, from the up until the mid 80s, I don't know. So very common manifold, probably used from like the 70s right into the 80s. There's lots of them floating around in junkyards. Well, maybe not so much nowadays, but I did find one at a used parts outlet here in town. Smashed it, rubber hammered in the firewall there a bit more to give a bit more clearance for the distributor. Somebody had already smashed in the firewall here, the heater box a little bit. There's a little bit of massaging done down here for the manifold clearance. That was already done. And I talked about where I smashed the frame in there to clear that manifold. Here's kind of a view of the, well, kind of a view. It is a view of the bottom of the power steering bracket. You can see, hopefully you can see how it's put together. You see that spacer where the bolt goes through. And so this oil filter is also hanging off that 3/8 plate piece on the front of the engine there. That's another thing. So this is a remote oil filter, and it's kind of handy there, right there. If you're doing an oil change on ramps, it's easy to get at. And I use the Earl's adapter, because I don't like those spin-on ones, because you never know where the hose fittings are going to line up. So this one's just goes on just like that. It bolts on. You take the bypass plate off the small block, and this just bolts on. It is kind of pricey. I can't remember what it cost me, but I think it was about 200 bucks by the time I got it here in Canada. But yeah, I think it's well worth it just for the, you know, the painless installation. And I think with these manifolds, if you're a little more, if you got that, move that exhaust pipe over a little further, closer to the frame, you probably could get away with a shorty oil filter that would just screw on there. You know, if you brought this down, actually, yeah, if you brought this down lower here, you know, put the bend right about where the flashlight is, as you can see, that could drop down quite a bit further, and then the bend could go here, and then you'd have lots of room for a filter. Getting it in and out of there might be a bit of a trick, but it probably would go. You just have to play around. And then, yeah, so this is the, this truck had long tube headers in it. I hated it. It's just a pain in the ass to work on, especially if you had to access the starter. They covered right over the starter. So I've got to get a cover for this torque converter now. And what else? Okay, yeah, I can see where I smashed the frame in there a little bit for clearance. So there's about, I don't know, 1/4 inch to the from the manifold to the upper A-arm. You could probably grind a little bit off of both and get away with it. I would grind more off the exhaust if I had to. But it's, you know, it's not touching, so it's all good. And then the oil pan, it was touching right here, so I drove a couple of wedges in there and dented the pan in a little bit, so that's good now. Yeah, so yeah, and this exhaust pipe here, you know, it's nice. There's lots of room up in there. It's almost like it's factory. And then this bend here, didn't get it quite right. I had to open it up a bit. Just cut it part way through, almost all the way through, and just hinged off the top and welded it back up. And then it was short, but this side was long, so I took the piece I cut off there, put it on there. So worked out all right. All I did was I took a piece of wire right here and just bent it kind of where I wanted it to go. This is the one for this side. You can see that wire. So I just kind of got it where I thought the middle of the pipe would be. And then I took it to a buddy of mine, owns a muffler shop in town. So he used that. It was it went pretty well. Like this piece fit really well, except it was too long at that end, the top end. So I just cut I think 2 1/4 inches out of it or so, and welded it back together. So yeah, so it's all good. I'm pretty happy how this all turned out in the end. You know, this truck originally did have a V8 in it. I think I said that already. You can see how they've bolted a plate on there to move that mount ahead. Probably wouldn't need that. I don't know how these mounts came, so you probably wouldn't need that if you weren't, unless you were running headers. And this, you would get away with not needing it, depending on what your mount to the engine, how it was configured. So probably just leave the original rubber mount where it was on the frame, like this one. This is in a stock location. Anyways, there's all kinds of different ways to do this. Well, not that many different ways, but a few different ways, a few variations of the same thing, I guess. Anyways, it fits in there good. And this is where we cut out or activate the exhaust cutouts. Switch on the console. Kind of fun. And this is the end. Thanks for watching.